Welcome to Speak Out, Stand Out by Green Communications, where we're learning how to help our kids become better communicators. We believe our voices are the strongest asset we have, and our mission is to empower the next generation to use their voices to make a difference in the world around them. Whether you are a parent, an educator, or are just invested in today's youth, we hope this podcast will help you build confidence in our future, one voice at a time. Hey there, I'm Elizabeth Green, founder of Green Communications, and I'm here with our lead coach, Bill Thompson, speaker extraordinaire, national winner, coach, all the things. And Bill, if you haven't met Bill before, we have a whole episode with Bill's bio, so you have to go check that out. But Bill teaches several different aspects of speech and debate on our team and has for years and has an immense background in this and knows all the ins and outs of the benefits of speech and debate. And this goes across the gamut. So today we're going to talk about the 5 short-term benefits for kids for participating in speech and debate, the 5 long-term benefits they will get from it, and the 5 benefits that parents, we will get from having our kids participate in speech and debate too. So Bill, thank you for being here as always.
Thanks for having me. I always love getting a chance to talk about speech and debate. It's a lot of fun.
And we know it is very, very helpful to the students who learn this at an early age. So let's dive right in. So what are your top 5 benefits that kids learn from speech and debate in the short term?
So for sure, for short term, there are 5 distinct ones. The first is it's a very impressionable time. And so when you put kids into an activity where everyone is competing to learn more, to speak more clearly, to study, to understand the world around them, then you're putting them into a situation where they're being positively peer pressured, right? They're not being drugged to the side. The kids who are successful are putting in good habits. They're putting in good work ethic. And so the pressure they will feel is to do their best, to prove themselves and to work hard. And so for me, that's the first thing. It's a good benefit because kids are going to have peer pressure and they're going to give in to peer pressure. They just do. That's what kids do. But to have them have good peer pressure can help them to feel better about themselves and not have to hide what they're doing from their parents, which a lot of times for kids is a huge thing. And for me, that would definitely be why it would be the number 5. But there's many others, 4 more in 5. I think another one is kids are really opinionated, right? And so sometimes they don't know how to agree to disagree or agree to just say, well, that's an interesting perspective you have, but I think I'm okay with mine. Debate teaches you to challenge your own thoughts, but also when you research something to be able to say, I appreciate that's your belief and that's okay for you to believe that, but I believe differently. This is what I believe. Can I share a little bit of that with you? And so on one hand, it's teaching kids to listen to divergent opinions. But on the other hand, it's teaching them to stand their ground once they've done the due diligence to figure out what it is they believe and then to articulate that message so that either they persuade other people that, hey, maybe you should consider my perspective, or to reassure themselves that they have a valid point and they don't need to be pressured into believing something they don't believe. I think that's an excellent quality for kids to have.
I think that is, and just to chime in there, I think that is such a huge quality because, in the kids that we've worked with, you can see how everybody has different personalities, but kids have one of those traits or the other. Either they're too likely to give in to a differing opinion or they're not willing to listen at all. And I think as adults, we can very often be like that as well. And so learning learning the importance of being able to do those things, stand by what you believe, but also listen to the other side at an early age and do it without becoming overly emotional is such a core, benefit that obviously that's short-term and long-term benefits as well.
Absolutely. I'll never forget. I had a 12-year-old when I was teaching in Florida. And he told a girl one time in a debate, he goes, that's great. That's your view. You can stand your ground. You just can't stand on mine. I get to determine mine. You stand your ground, but don't try and trample over my ground because I have the right to believe what I believe too. And I was like, wow, you really do get it, kid. That's awesome.
Love it.
The third one, I think people would really just not being genuine if they said their kids weren't on the internet like all the time. And so they're being exposed to a lot of information. So debate teaches you how to quality information and fake information. You start to know what are reputable sources, what are not reputable sources, or even within that, which lean certain sources have. So you're like, oh, makes sense. That's because it's this publication. Maybe I should move into a more neutral publication and see what their spin is on it. And so we spoke in the other podcast about how there's sort of a dearth of knowledge when we were kids. Like you had to go to the library, you had to actively seek information. That's not the case today. Kids are, in a way, almost being waterboarded with information. It's like constantly coming in. They don't know what to do with it. And so debate gives them the capacity to set up filters so they can start to get the junk off to the sides and only take in the good information. And that is a quality, honestly, their grandparents probably could have a little better. My mom's in her 80s and she sends me email worries all the time. And I'm like, Mom, that's a hack. Don't do that. Don't touch that information. And so when people weren't raised on the internet, they really don't know how to differentiate it. And a lot of times kids don't either. But when you push them into an activity like speech and debate, they formulate those skills pretty quickly. And it's a lifelong thing that'll benefit them.
Absolutely. And like you said, there's so much information out there now. It's a whole different challenge for the kids growing up today than we had. I know my background is in broadcast journalism. And one of the courses I took in college was how to identify credible sources and things like that. I didn't really learn about that, though, till I was in college. Like, we can't let our kids wait until that time to learn how to differentiate between, quality sources and neutral sources when there is so much information, in front of them all the time. So I think that's an excellent point. Great benefit.
I think it's also important. If you're a journalism major, sure, you get that information. If you're a communications major, sure, you get taught that class in college. Engineers, no, they don't really get that class. Doctors, if it's not in JAMA, probably don't want to read it, So like they have to figure, they don't really get that information, how to process social things that are on the internet. So I just think it's really important. And it's a good skill to learn. The second one is one I think as parents, we take for granted, but the kids will get it quickly. We live in a society where you get participation trophies for everything. And that's not debate, right? Debate, you get harsh feedback. It is a one-on-one competition. They were better than you, specifically on this issue, specifically in this way. And so debate teaches kids to get a little thicker skin and to get better at processing critical feedback. And instead of hearing you're a bad person, hearing you could have won, but you did these things wrong. So then you get the opportunity next week to better yourself, improve on that line of communication, and maybe win the next time. I don't think many kids in school settings get the honest, unfiltered feedback that you get on the other end of a debate ballot. They might get a red ink that says incorrect. What does that tell me? It just tells me I didn't get it right. How do I get it right? Give me feedback that possibly tells me if you would have done it this way, if you would have gone for this argument, if you would have edited this argument, you could have won. Debate teaches kids to interpret critical feedback and to know what questions to ask if they're uncertain about the feedback they receive. And to me, that serves an immediate benefit, but also certainly a lifelong benefit. I don't think anybody's ever going to get a performance review and be like, oh, that was awesome, because they have to tell you did things wrong, because otherwise they're given big raises all the time. They're just not going to do that. That's not corporate America. That's not how it's structured. And you need to engage and say, because sometimes people will give blank feedback in debate, and that's the worst because they just say, I didn't like it. As a debater, I get to say, no, why? What did you not like? I'm not saying your decision is wrong. Just help me understand how I'm not on this side of the ballot again. And so then it also empowers them to, when feedback is nebulous or doesn't give you a positive way to improve upon it, to challenge the person giving them the feedback. So what do I need to do to make this work for you? You say this is not adequate now. How do I meet this expectation? What are positive corrective steps I can take to become better in this area? And to me, that's really good to learn as a kid, because if you learn it as a kid, then when you get to be an adult, you're not afraid of feedback, not afraid of criticism. You see it as an opportunity for growth. And then you can hold them accountable for giving you the opportunity for growth by giving you the outline of what it is they do want you to do. So to me, that's just a big benefit.
Absolutely. Because the only way we can get better, right, is
absolutely. I can't pick what I'm not aware of.
The only thing we can get better is by knowing what we need to do to get better. So
absolutely.
You're right. That's a great point.
And I think the last benefit is really the one that is the most beneficial to kids. There's nothing kids want more than to belong. Nothing. And so for smart kids who like to read the news, you're a weirdo. Okay. Like I was a weirdo at 12. I was a little kid in the fall of 1979 who would come into my kindergarten class and tell my teacher about Jimmy Carter and why I loved him and why he was going to be the best president ever. It turns out I was wrong about that part. He might have been the best person to ever be president, but I loved it. And so she was like, well, do you want to tell the class about the news every morning when they come in? And so I got to do the news every morning to my kindergarten class. So she really is the reason why I love speech. And she always encouraged me to talk in class, to tell the class about things I was learning, because I was that weird kid who loved the news. And Walter Cronkite was my hero at 5. So, but then I came to speech and debate and I was like, wait, you guys read the news too? That's awesome. You mean we can talk about like the midterms and you're not going to call me a freak for wanting to talk about the midterms at 13? Or you have really creative kids who like have every Broadway musical ever memorized, right? And they sing it back and forth to each other. This is pre-Hamilton. Now it's kind of mainstream. For a lot of kids, they've never fit in until they step inside of a debate space or inside of a presentation space or a speaking space or a performance space. Because especially in rural America, we don't necessarily always value those qualities or skills. But you can find kids from all across the country who think you're pretty cool and you're pretty awesome for liking the things you like. And you don't get called words that are offensive or make you feel other than. And so the really big benefit of speech and debate is that you find a home with like-minded kids who make you feel like you don't have to be somebody you're not.
And that feeling of belonging, I mean, as a parent of a young teenager right now, I can absolutely see how important that is to him to have a place where he feels like he belongs as he's navigating, growing up. And just to clarify too, like you've talked about, you were obviously not a shy kid. You got up in front of your kindergarten class and talked about the news. But even if you're listening to this and you're like, well, my kid wouldn't talk in front of anybody, speech and debate is still for them and can absolutely make a huge difference in their life, because that was me. I was the one that cried before I had to give my first speech in speech class that ultimately transformed my life. So
I got sick before every final round. And cry, I just got nerves. I'm an anxious person sometimes. I can tell you though, from coaching for 30 years, kids on the spectrum love speech and debate.
Yes.
They love the precision of finding facts and knowing really weird and odd details to some, but to them, they're like amazing. Judges love that stuff. LGBTQIA kids who are maybe not just cisgender, heteronormative kids, find their space. And it's a lot easier to tell someone else's story than to tell your own at that age. So being able to get into roles or characters in the interpretive events that say everything you wanted to say, but it doesn't have to be as scary as me saying it, is liberating for a lot of kids. And finally, and this might sound weird to some parents, dyslexic kids love speech. Love it, because you don't have to write it down. You don't have to worry about your spelling. You don't have to worry about your penmanship. Just speak your truth. Dyslexic kids love it. Like I can think of so many kids who have reading abilities, be it dyslexia or dysgraphia or any of those things, but they feel free as they can be when they're speaking because nobody's looking and making sure they got every word precise or they spelled it right. Well, we don't care how you spell it. That's why we do it. My punctuation was terrible on my ACT because I just put commas where I would take a pause when I was giving a speech. Turns out I'm always right.
Or mine's always ... There's no periods. It's just ... phrase
awesome.
to phrase to phrase.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
But to me, those are the short-term benefits for kids, and I think they're really helpful.
Those are huge. All right. So obviously we want things that our kids are learning now to help them as they advance in their life and in their careers and future relationships and all that. So what do you think are the long-term benefits that kids get from participating in speech and debate?
Overall, long-term, you're going to be a more creative thinker. Companies are always looking for people who can take what they know and make it something different, better, evolutionary. And debate teaches you how to take the same premise and see it in a way that other people can't prepare for, and to circumvent the challenges that other people might provide for you with arguments. It makes you a problem solver because debate is chess, right? Just spoken. So you can't worry about the initial argument. You're like, what is this trap when it develops 2 speeches down the road? Where's the gotcha moment where this becomes a turn and suddenly I'm fighting for my life because they're ahead on magnitude, probability, and time frame because they turn something in the nuance of how they ask a question and I didn't catch it. So it makes you be creative and it makes you anticipate challenges, which I think any employer would love that quality in an employee. The next thing is it gives you a clear comparison against other students and academics. If I'm rich, I can study for my SAT or ACT, which are also not getting used as much anymore, right? So like people used to say, oh, my ACT score was a 35. Well, so are a lot of people. So are a lot of people, not everybody, but like when you're talking about getting into MIT or Harvard, everybody's got a good score. Everybody's got a good ACT. But what everybody doesn't have is a national championship against other kids with 35s and really good grade point averages. And so when you look at Ivies, they disproportionately look at how you competed in speech and debate as a clear comparison between candidates because they know when they have a winning champion, they're not smart, just smart. They're also competitive. They're also hardworking. They're also disciplined. They're also adaptive to the judge who's in the back of the room. They also are able to adapt in terms of inside of a round without coaching telling them how to do it. And those are skills that all colleges want. So it gives you a clear comparative advantage over the people who don't participate.
That's really interesting. And I read something just recently. I believe it was a recruiter from Yale saying that on a college application, the number one thing that you could have would be to be an Eagle Scout. The number two thing is to participate in speech and debate. So Ivy League colleges are looking at that, like you just said, and expecting to see things like that. But that is what can absolutely set you apart. So to be the only thing ahead of, the qualities that they're looking for to be an Eagle Scout, that's pretty amazing.
And I've only known a couple Eagle Scouts and they are tireless in their pursuit of that Eagle. So if they're first, I'll let that slide because they work real well.
Absolutely. That takes years and years and years and years. But that says a lot though about how much speech and debate's valued at
the third skill, and I think anybody who's been in corporate America has had this experience. You're given a presentation and one of the people, the bigwigs, as it were, ask a question that nobody else on your team was anticipating. You have to answer it in the moment, in real time, with everybody glaring at you. That's the same as debate, right? When somebody makes an argument you've never considered and you have that, oh my God moment in your head, you can't let it show on your face. And you have to be like, oh, that's easy. You just do it this way, right? And so the ability to adapt on the fly and not seem pressured or stressed and to give a quality answer is certainly a skill set that debate teaches. And it's a skill set you'll need when you go in for that college interview, when you go in for that first job interview, when you give your dissertation defense, when you give your first presentation to the boss, right? They're going to have questions. They're not dumb people. They have good insights and they know what they're looking for. You have to adapt in the moment based on the way they're asking questions to see what the right answer is. It's the same way as if you're cross-examining me in a round and I'm watching the judge's face and I start an answer and they're like shutting down with their body language. I have to change my tone. I have to change my approach a momently. And the moment they lean in or I see the start of a smile or their eyebrows start to perk up, I know I got them listening. And so now I just give them more of what that was because I'm paying attention to them and I'm adapting to their cues because ultimately it's their decision. People say they give a presentation to the board, but you're really just trying to convince the ultimate decision maker. So you watch them when you give your speech. Make eye contact with everybody else, but you adapt to their feedback when you're giving your speech. And to me, that's a lifelong skill that debate teaches you very early on.
It's true.
It's a good one. And the next one is time management. I'm a firm believer that probably 70% of the kids who don't finish college, it's not because they're not intelligent. It's just because they didn't figure out a way to make the time management work for them. And some people have more difficulties. They're a single parent. They have to work full time. They have to do many different things. I'm not putting blame on them or saying they're less than. It's just that people who best figure out how to manage their time are most likely to succeed in college. They're most likely to succeed in the business world. They're most likely to succeed in life. And if you can maintain AP classes and do competitive debate on a national circuit, then you're ready for law school. Like you're going to do just fine. Figure it out, right? Because top level debaters are probably researching 6 hours a day. So they're researching at lunch. They're researching in the car while they're riding home with mom and dad. They're giving practice speeches while they're in the shower. They figure out how to multitask and make the most of their time. These are the qualities that will get you through grad school or your master's or any of those other things that take a lot of time management and dedication. But the final thing I think that really debate gives you long term is a lot of times it's not what you know, it's who you know. And the people you compete with every weekend are going to be the most successful people you know. I love what I do, and I just never was wanting to be a lawyer. But of the 7 people on my college debate team, 6 are very successful lawyers, and one of them runs a political action committee. So if I need to get the ear of somebody, or if I need help with a legal issue, or I know someone who has need help with a legal issue, then I can go to them. I have other friends who are speechwriters, who are press secretaries, who are running campaigns for governors and lieutenant governors. You meet really successful people. One of my favorite people to compete against in college, her name's Amy Webb. I didn't even think I'd talk about her. She's amazing. She got her master's of journalism from Columbia, and then she worked for Foreign Press and Wall Street Journal in Japan. She speaks Japanese fluently, and she basically predicts what's going to happen in terms of digital communications. And so she's one of the people that influences the way that it moves forward. And she's given TED Talks, and she's written New York Times bestsellers, and she does performances at South by Southwest. And she gave the commencement address for West Virginia, VU, a couple of years ago. But those are the types of people that you meet on your way through speech and debate. And it's always good to have smart people with good job offerings in your corner. And I think that's one of the best things, because we talked a little bit about positive peer pressure, but it's also nice to have a positive safety net when you get older. And, life changes, and maybe you're not happy in your career. For a while, when I was figuring out what I wanted to do, my college debate partner, who is one of the best lawyers in the state of Kentucky, he had me do voir dire for him. So I would go through and I would look at potential jurors, and I'd be like, nope, that one. You want that one. Because he knows that whenever we debated, I could read judges. I could say, they look like they're not buying a word you say, dude. Do not want that judge. That person on your jury, strike them. Or when he has final closing arguments, I would always be the devil's advocate and be like, why don't you say this? Why did you make this argument? Why did you even put that thought in their mind? Right. And so we trusted each other to give that kind of feedback. And it was something to do while I was figuring out what I wanted to do. So it was nice to have that type of luxury, because you meet just really successful people and you make really impactful impacts on each other's lives. And so it's nice to know that you have those types of professional contacts, I guess.
Absolutely. And you have the confidence in yourself to be able to hop on and talk to anybody, right? Whether it's somebody in your network or not. I think that's an overarching theme, I think, of a lot of the benefits you've talked about today, is that the self-confidence that you gain from it gives you the ability to do all of the things that you were talking about and have networks of people that you know and trust and can help you in your life, or to talk to the boss of the company that you've never met before and answer hard questions. So I think that's a big overarching theme, and something that is obviously a huge part of our mission at Green Communications, is to build that self-confidence, because it all really starts there.
Every voice matters, but not every voice is heard, and no voices are heard if you don't speak up. So if we don't create spaces for kids to articulate their beliefs, their thoughts, their visions, not only do we ruin the opportunity for us to find out what they think and believe, but oftentimes until we say it out loud, we don't realize always what we think or believe. That's part of the reasons why people go to therapy. You always knew what you thought all along, but until you say it out loud, it doesn't really feel real. And
right.
So for me,
there's so much power in that.
You put a name to something when you speak it out into the universe. And so it allows kids to speak their convictions, which is invaluable in my opinion, honestly.
Absolutely. So lots of benefits that participating in speech and debate can help our kids with now as they are growing up and as they venture into adulthood. But what about me as a parent? There's so many things my kids can be involved in, and I could be shuffling them from place to place every single day, every single evening, and spending my hard-earned money on all kinds of activities. Why is speech and debate beneficial for me as a parent?
Absolutely. Well, the first reason is, and it doesn't always feel like the best benefit at first, but you have kids who aren't sheep, right? They don't blindly follow. And so while sometimes you just want them to go to bed, and answering why I have to go to bed might not be the best thing for anybody in that moment, the fact that your kids have a honest, questioning stance about how the world around them is shaped is a good thing for you as a parent. They're not going to be blindly led. They're going to make their own ways forward. And also within that, they all get a chance to make their way forward. You can do a lot of activities, but honestly, in most activities, if you're not one of the 2 or 3 best kids on the team or in that area, you're not going to get much playing. You're not going to get a chance. Every kid on the team gets a chance to have 6 rounds of debate when you go to a tournament normally. Every kid has the same amount of time to say their piece. Now, some are going to be a way more successful than others, but you're not paying for your kid to sit on a bench and watch other kids have fun and learn skills.
It's true.
Right? So like your kids are going to get a chance to go to tournaments and actively participate and actively progress to the rate that, one, they're capable, but 2, they're willing to put in the effort to, because I always tell kids that hard workers beat smart kids every day because smart kids are lazy most of the time. In elementary and middle school, if it comes easy to you, then teachers are just happy that you're afloat and they go back to save the ones that are drowning, and they never really push you much above the tide. In debate, that's not true. Everybody wants your spot. So you might be smart and you might have the great argument, but if you give me a week to figure it out, I'm going to get you. Yeah. You might have figured it out in 20 minutes, but you give me a week, I'll be ready for you next week when I see you. And if you're lazy and you don't improve your argument, I'm going to beat you next week. And so that is an invaluable skill for kids to learn, because it teaches them to move forward and to choose their own adventure, as it were. Don't let anybody tell you what you can or can't do. You're the one that determines how many rounds you win. Your work ethic determines that. So that kind of leads into the 4th quality for parents. You develop kids who are better studiers, right? They learn how to study, how to be efficient when they study, how to get the most result for their efforts. And so, whereas you used to probably get concerned when you hadn't heard your kid for a while, what are they up to in there? If you're a debate parent, then what they are up to in there is making their 1AC, or they're developing front lines for their rebuttals. And so having kids who value studying and learn how to study efficiently is a true benefit to any parent. It depends on how old your kids are, but once they start in high school, most of the really good tournaments are on college campuses. So it's really like a free college visit for your kids almost every weekend when they go to tournaments.
Yeah.
To me, that's invaluable as a parent. Like, I think about when I was coaching last in South Florida, during the year, kids went to Yale, Northwestern, Cornell. They went to University of Pennsylvania, UPenn, Philadelphia. They went to University of Florida. They went to George Mason. They would normally go to Vandy or see Vandy when we were in Nashville for a tournament. And occasionally we went to UC Berkeley. And so they're going to and Harvard. Yeah. So they were going to all these different schools, and it's a chance to know Harvard's campus, to know Yale's campus, to know Cornell's campus, to know Emory's campus. We went to Emory a lot. And so that's really invaluable for kids. If they can have positive memories associated with a place, or to know what they think of a university or its culture or its atmosphere, that's very helpful for them a lot of the time, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The next one is healthy competition and responsibility. We talked a little bit earlier about kids receiving critical feedback. Debate, more than anything, teaches you the responsibility for your own outcomes, right? Like, you have to say, well, maybe they didn't understand it, but it's my job to make them understand. So ultimately, if they didn't understand, that responsibility lies back with me.
Oh, man, that's huge. That's huge. Let me just stop you there and say that is huge. You sold me as a parent.
Right.
It's to accept the responsibility for anything can be very challenging. So that's huge.
Yeah, because that's the thing. And thing I always told kids, because sometimes kids are human. They're going to complain about their judge, but you have to ask them. So if it's just the judge's reactions that matter, then why do you even prepare? Well, because I have to convince them. Okay, so if you didn't convince them, whose fault is that? I guess. Right. Okay, so now maybe we need to learn how people value things, or we need to take the time to read that judge's philosophy for the round, so we don't run the exact argument they said on line 4 of their philosophy they don't like. Why did you do that? You wasted 3 minutes of a round arguing something they told you at the beginning they don't like. Wow, why would you do that? Take the time, read their philosophy, learn that communication is more about what's heard than what's said. right? Like you can say really pretty things, but if people don't hear it in a pretty way or not in a way that their brain processes it, you just wasted your time. You had to figure out how to make the message receptive to them. What do they care about? And I always tell kids, you have three types of judges. You're going to have parent judges who are there because they love their kids. Well, guess what? You're going to make impacts about kids and what matters to kids because ultimately that's where they care, right? If you have a teacher in the back of the room, you're going to make sure that your English, your subject verb agreement is very good, that your historical facts are very good because disproportionately, you're either going to get an English teacher or a history teacher in the back of the room when it's a teacher. When it's a coach, you're going to make sure that you're technically clean, that you're making smart arguments, that you're doing all of the little minutia that I get on you every week because that's what they care about. They're a debate coach. They care about the craft. They don't care how you say it. They care that you say it in the right way, right? So that alone, if you just know who your judge is, all of them are smart, but they care about different things. So give them what they care about and you're going to win a lot more. But that's on you to take responsibility for understanding what's asked of you and around and then meeting the expectation.
Because it can be very subjective, right?
Right. It is very
Very
subjective.
subjective. It's not like you shoot a basket and you make the basket, you score 2 points, you miss it, you get 0. It's not as simple as that you have multiple different ideas and opinions and, like you said, judging criteria, basically, right? Based on the judge themselves. So figuring that out ahead of time is important.
I think the last thing is I took karate for 7 years when I was a kid and knock on wood, I haven't had to use it in my adult life ever. And I don't think I could give a kata if I wanted to these days. And I took hundreds of free throws in my backyard when I was a kid because I was convinced that one day I would wow the NBA, but I never got over 6 feet. And so that's really not probably going to happen. And so I think we push kids into activities, which our bodies age, we get older. The athletic prowess we work so hard to develop when we're a teen doesn't always come to fruition. And even if it does, if you're an NBA player, your average career is 4 years.
Yeah.
Make it in the NBA. If you're in the NFL, your average career is like 6 years. So you're preparing a whole lifetime for 6 years of your life. And then what? Debate, you're always going to talk. You're always going to need to persuade people. You're always going to walk into like weird situations like car dealerships or negotiating real estate or trying to get a promotion where you're going to have to know persuasion skills and be able to express yourself in a cognizant way that shows that you have at least some modicum of understanding of what you're talking about, even though they're the expert. Those are skills that are portable for your whole life, right? So when you invest in debate, you're giving your kids skills that they're going to use throughout their life. I thought for the longest time that I was going to be a college football player. And then I blew a knee out and broke my ankle my senior year. And suddenly debate was full focus what I was doing because you can give a speech on crutches. You cannot tackle somebody on crutches. It's just not, it's not going to happen. And I've had 3 surgeries on my ankle. There's no way I was ever going to be a college athlete after that. And so many different careers that kids push towards or paths that kids invest so much time in. You step wrong walking off the sidewalk and that career and that dream's over. You get tackled wrong by somebody and that dream is over, right? And so debate, barring like really bad laryngitis, you're never going to really miss it when you're not actively sick. I have given speeches on crutches. I've given speeches on a knee scooter because I was convinced I was an athlete my whole life and really wasn't. I tried, but you can't do that in sports. You just can't. And so speech is something that you're going to use these skills your whole life. I mean, honestly, like I think about my debate coach right to the very end, like he was in a nursing home for a little bit and he would convince them to give him what he wanted, even though it wasn't on his chart because he was just really persuasive. And I was like, look at you using those skills right to the very end. I see you, coach. Okay. But it is important. I don't know that there's any more portable skill than understanding what people like and understanding what people want from you and then being able to formulate a message in a way that they get that, right? So like it gets you better deals. It gets you better incentives. It gives you the chance to get a fair shake. Sometimes when a fair shake is not in the cards, it allows you not to get scared when people ask you questions that are really tough and difficult. And all those skills, there's no injury that's going to make that not an important skill or one that you can pull off. So to me, the number one skill that kids learn from debate and the number one benefits to parents is you're going to have kids who have going to spend a lifetime using the skills you invested in when they were 12. I
100%.
don't know that anything else does that.
Right. Right. Yeah. I can't think of anything either. And I mean, athletics are fantastic. My husband is a football coach. So I think athletics
Absolutely.
definitely have their place and they have so many benefits and teach kids so many skills. But if your kids participate in athletics, there can still be room for speech and debate. Or if your kid is not athletic and there's still options out there, right? And unfortunately, the vast majority of public schools in America don't offer speech and debate programs. And so that's what we have seen, there's a severe need for that. And so we're really excited here at Green Communications to be able to offer that virtually, whether you have it in your area or not. But definitely something to consider and so many benefits all along the way. I remember we were just talking the other day and you were talking about arguing with your parents. And we're going to do a whole episode about the benefits of having an argumentative child. But that's
Absolutely.
another thing that speech and debate does, right? It helps them to process what they want and understand that it's not about what they want. It's about what the parent wants and having that conversation and having that communication. And that's a whole nother episode that we'll talk about, but
Yeah.
just so many benefits that they can.
To put the psychology hat on, it's an age appropriate behavior. It's part of what Eric said and says you're doing. You're developing your identity, right? And one of the ways to do that is to figure out what you believe and why you believe it. So it's natural that they're going to challenge. So just engage the challenge and force them to do it in a way that's structured and mannerful. That's the best thing. And to your point, sports are great. I always told the coaches, when one of your kids gets hurt and you don't think they're going to be through the season, send them my way. Because I'm all about competitive kids. Bring them.
Exactly. Speech and debate. Absolutely. You can't think that that's not competitive because it absolutely is, hands down. They're in it to win too. So, all right.
No, there's all kinds of benefits. And I hope that your kid will join up for one of our classes or private tutoring sessions, because I'd like to share those portable skills with them. And it really is the best return on investment you can get, honestly.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Bill Thompson, thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you for listening. And go check us out if you're interested in more information at greencommunicationsedu.com.
Very good. Thanks.
If you are looking for more ways to build communication skills in your kids, grab our free mini lesson on how to craft a polished and professional speech out of thin air, along with 52 fun prompts so your kids can practice every single week. You can find that along with info about our upcoming public speaking and debate courses for kids at greencommunicationsedu.com.